say your life flashes before your eyes in the moments before you die, but for me, it started long before that. My story began years ago, in a little house with peeling wallpaper and a man who made promises he never kept. James and I met when I was barely out of high school, working the morning shift at the diner to help my mom pay rent. He was older, charming, the kind of man who knew how to make you feel seen. I didn't notice the cracks until I was too far in to crawl back out. It started small. Raised voices, slammed doors. I told myself everyone fights, that love wasn't always supposed to be easy. Then came the names: useless, stupid, crazy. By the time his hands started following his words, I'd learned to make excuses for the bruises. I tripped, I'd say, or the shelf fell. I stayed longer than I should have. I told myself I was staying for Lily, our daughter, though she was barely more than a baby at the time. She'd cry when James would shout, tiny fists clutching at my shirt, and I swore I'd leave. I really thought I would. But when you're worn down like that, when someone makes you believe you're worthless, it's like your feet get stuck in cement. It wasn't until he shoved me into the wall one night, hard enough to split my lip, that something in me broke. I remember standing there, the taste of blood on my tongue, holding Lily as she screamed in my arms. That was the moment I knew. The next morning, I packed a bag, grabbed her, and walked out the door. Leaving wasn't freedom, though. Not really. James had a way of staying with me, even when he wasn't there. A text now and then, just to remind me he knew where I was. A call in the middle of the night, with nothing but silence on the other end. He always made sure I couldn't forget him. For years, it was just Lily and me. I worked doubles at the diner, scrubbing tables and pouring coffee until my feet ached. Every penny went toward rent, daycare, and the never-ending stack of bills. Rachel, my best friend, was the only one who made it bearable. She'd come by after her shifts at the bar, always with a joke or a story to make me laugh. She said I deserved more, but I didn't believe her. Then, one day, everything changed. I was at the gas station, buying milk with the last $5 in my wallet. The lottery machine caught my eye, one of those ridiculous impulse buys I usually rolled my eyes at. But that day, for whatever reason, I grabbed a ticket. Just one. I didn't even look at it until 3 days later, after Lily had gone to bed. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through overdue bills, when I remembered the ticket stuffed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out, half smirking at myself for the waste. Then I saw the numbers. I checked once, twice, 3 times. My breath caught in my throat as it sank in. $50 million. 50 million. At first, it didn't feel real. I didn't scream or cry. I just sat there, staring at the ticket in my hand. The first thing I thought of wasn't what I could do with the money. It was James. I imagined his face if he ever found out, the way his mouth would twist into that cruel smile of his. I thought about Lily, about how he'd use the money to worm his way back into our lives. He'd say he'd changed. He always said that. And I'd almost believed him once. That night, I didn't sleep. I hid the ticket in an old recipe book no one ever touched and started locking the doors twice before bed. That was when the paranoia began. At first, it was small, a shadow outside the window that disappeared when I turned my head, a feeling like I was being watched. Then the calls started. The first one was just breathing. The second was static. And then, one night, a voice. "Mia." I froze, my blood turning to ice. It wasn't James, but it wasn't a stranger either. The voice was distorted, broken, like it was coming from a machine. "Who is this?" I whispered. The line went dead. I wanted to tell Rachel, but what could I say? That I'd won the lottery and was too scared to spend a cent? That I was being haunted by a voice I couldn't trace? She'd have called me crazy, just like James always did. So I kept it to myself. And slowly, the money stopped feeling like a blessing. It became a curse. He next few days felt like walking through fog. Everything was muffled, out of reach. The calls kept coming. At first, they were just static, long, drawn-out silences. Then, one night, it happened. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling when the phone rang. The caller ID was blocked, just like all the others. I didn't want to answer. I really didn't. But something told me I had to. I picked it up. Hello? Nothing at first, just heavy breathing. Then someone, spoke. Mia. I froze. It wasn't just static this time. It was a voice, and it sounded like Lily. My heart stopped. Lily? I whispered, my voice barely a breath. Mom, the voice choked out, distorted and warped, like it was being squeezed through an old radio. Help me. Please. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking violently. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body was frozen. It wasn't Lily. It couldn't have been. But it sounded like her. I had to get her. I had to go home, right now. The fear surged through me like a wave. I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door, but just as I reached the driveway, the doorbell rang. It was James. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared at the man who had haunted my every nightmare. What do you want? My voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. His face was different, hollow. He was thinner, scruffier. But the eyes, those eyes, were the same. Cold, manipulative. He stepped forward just enough to make me step back. I came to apologize, Mia. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I've changed. I've been through hell. I want to make things right. For Lily. For us. I couldn't move. I just stared at him, the bile rising in my throat. His hands were shaking too, but I knew better. I could see the lie in his eyes. I had seen it too many times before. You're lying. The words slipped out of my mouth before I could stop them. You haven't changed. You'll never change. He looked hurt, but it was the same fake hurt, the same act. Please, Mia, I'm begging you. His voice dropped to a whisper, like it was just for me. I know what you've got. I know about the lottery. I'm not asking for the money, Mia. I'm asking for you. A chill ran down my spine. You don't want the money? I said, my throat dry, barely able to speak. You want me. You always wanted me. He stepped closer. His breath reeked of whiskey. I want you back. I'll do whatever it takes. Just let me in. Before I could react, the phone in my pocket buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a message. The screen lit up with 3 simple words. I know where you are. The room spun. My stomach churned. The voice in my head screamed that it wasn't over yet. I wasn't safe. Not even with James. I can't. I stumbled backward, but his hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with enough force to hurt. Come back inside, Mia. I won't hurt you. His voice was cold, almost mocking now, like he had been playing me all along. I yanked my arm out of his grip, finally seeing the truth. No, I said, panic rising in my chest. You're not here to fix things. You never were. His lips twisted into a sick smile, and I saw it then, the flash of something dangerous in his eyes. You're right. I'm not here for the money. I'm here for you. The words didn't even register before I felt the pressure around my throat. He lunged, pushing me hard against the doorframe, his weight pinning me down. The ground seemed to tilt beneath me as I gasped for air, the world spinning in and out of focus. He wants my life. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. James didn't care about the money. He never did. He wanted to take everything from me. My peace, my safety, my very breath. I fought back with every ounce of strength I had left, kicking and scratching, pushing him off. But he was too strong. I had never stood a chance. Then, just as I thought I would lose consciousness, I heard a voice. A real voice this time. Mom! Lily. Her voice, clear and terrified, pierced the darkness. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her small figure framed by the streetlight outside. "Lily, no!" I screamed. But James heard her too. His eyes flicked to her, then back to me, the cold smile still lingering on his lips. "Get inside, Lily!" I cried, my voice hoarse, desperate. But she was frozen in place, too scared to move. And that was when I knew. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. James didn't want the money. He wanted to destroy everything I loved, and he was going to start with me. I never thought I'd end up here. Looking back, I'm not sure where I went wrong. Maybe it was when I stopped fighting. It wasn't always like this, though. Once, I had dreams, real ambitions. I started my business with the best intentions. My wife, Emily, supported me through it all. But dreams can crumble faster than they're built, and mine crashed down in flames. At first, it was just the small stuff. Late bills, creditors calling. Then it snowballed. One failed deal after another, and the debts piled up like bricks, each one weighing heavier than the last. Emily could see the toll it was taking on me, but there wasn't much she could do. I kept telling her things would turn around, even though I knew they wouldn't. I remember the day it all changed. I was walking down Main Street, the same path I'd taken 100 times before, when I saw him. A man I didn't recognize, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, standing in front of a cafe, smoking a cigarette. He looked like someone who belonged in a movie, like someone who wasn't supposed to be real. He caught my eye, and for a split second, I felt the oddest sensation, a feeling that he was waiting for me. "You look like a man with problems," he said, stepping toward me as I paused on the sidewalk. I couldn't place his accent, foreign, but not quite. His eyes were dark, almost too dark, as though he could see through me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice tight, defensive. He smiled, a calm, unsettling smile that made me uneasy. "Let's just say I'm someone who can help. I know about your situation, John. Business, debt, the usual trouble. I have an offer for you." I shook my head. "I'm not interested." But he didn't back off. Instead, he leaned in, his voice lowering. "What if I told you I could give you $10,000 for every favor you do for me? Just small tasks, nothing too serious, simple stuff, move a suitcase, deliver a package, whatever I ask. All I need in return is that you do exactly as I say." My mind raced. It sounded too good to be true, but the idea of money, that much money, was too tempting. What was there to lose? I was already drowning in debt. "What kind of favors?" I asked, despite myself. He smiled wider. "That's not for you to know yet. All you need to do is accept the offer." And for the first time in a long time, I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be my way out. I agreed. The first favor was harmless enough. I moved a suitcase from one location to another. No big deal. The stranger, he never gave me his name, paid me in cash, no questions asked. For a moment, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. But it wasn't over. The tasks kept coming, each one darker than the last, transporting things I didn't want to know about, meeting shady people I didn't want to see again. And with each favor, the money piled up. But it wasn't just the money that kept me coming back. It was the power, the control. The more I did, the more I felt like I was slipping away from the person I once was. It started to get ugly. I didn't realize how far I'd fallen until one night, when I found myself in a dingy warehouse, the stranger's cold voice whispering over the phone. "It's time for the next step, John. I need you to do something for me, something that will change everything." I swallowed, my heart thundering in my chest. "What do you need?" "Kidnap someone. I'll tell you who, and I'll take care of the rest. You'll be well compensated." The word kidnap echoed in my mind, but the offer, the money, made it hard to think straight. I didn't hesitate. By the time I realized what I had done, I was already too deep in. The tasks escalated, darker, more dangerous. I did things I never thought I'd be capable of. Stealing, lying, hurting people who didn't deserve it. I stopped looking at myself in the mirror. My reflection wasn't someone I recognized anymore. And then, the worst task of all came. The phone rang late one night, the familiar number flashing across the screen. I picked up without thinking. "John?" The voice on the other end was cold, calm, like it always was. "I've got a new favor for you. This one is personal." My stomach dropped. "It's Emily," he said. "I have her. If you want to see her again, if you want to save her, you need to kill your closest friend." I froze. "Rick, my best friend." "Do you understand, John?" The voice pressed. "You kill him and she lives. If you hesitate, well, we both know what happens then." I felt a lump in my throat, the weight of the choice crushing me. I had been pushed so far down this dark path, that the thought of losing Emily was the only thing that kept me going. But could I really kill Rick? My friend? I found myself standing in front of Rick's house later that night, my hand shaking on the doorbell. "John?" he asked, his voice surprised but welcoming. "What are you doing here?" I didn't know how to say it, how to tell him that I was about to betray him. And then, just as I opened my mouth, the realization hit me. The stranger had set this all up. He had been playing me from the start. Emily wasn't in danger. She never was. It was all part of the game. In a twisted moment of clarity, I made my choice. I pulled the trigger, not on Rick, but on Emily. Blood splattered across my face as she gasped, her eyes wide with betrayal, shock. "You've always been a coward," she whispered, as the life left her. I looked at Rick, who was staring at me in horror. But it was too late. I framed him, made it look like he'd been the one to kill her. The police believed it. They always believe the lie you tell first. As for me, I'm still drowning. Every dollar I earned, every task I did, it all led here, into a hell of my own making. And the stranger? He's still out there, watching, waiting for my next decision. We were supposed to be escaping. That's what we kept telling ourselves. A weekend getaway, away from the mess of work, school, and relationships. No distractions, no phones, just 5 friends and a weekend in an old cabin deep in the woods. We all needed this, especially me. I'd known Kara the longest. We'd been friends since high school, shared everything, even secrets that could tear us apart. Then there was Ethan, my skeptic friend, always laughing off my worries. James was the tough guy, the protector, always acting like he had it all figured out, like he could take on anything. Ben was the curious one, the guy who would push every boundary if it meant discovering something new. It was supposed to be simple, peaceful. The cabin sat at the edge of the woods, barely visible from the road. The place was old, probably older than any of us, with creaky wooden floors and stone walls that gave it a certain charm. It looked like it belonged in a postcard. A perfect little cabin surrounded by trees. The kind of place you'd picture when you wanted to get away from it all. But there was something off about it. Something I couldn't shake from the moment we arrived. Maybe it was the isolation, or the way Kara seemed a little too familiar with the place, like she knew exactly where everything was. I didn't say anything at first. She wasn't the type to be transparent about her past. Whatever she'd been through, she wasn't going to share it now. We unpacked, settled in, we ate, we drank, and we laughed like everything was fine. The storm outside, though, winds howling, rain slashing against the windows, was getting stronger. There was something about it, something unsettling, like the world outside was waiting for something to happen. I couldn't help but feel tense, as if we were being watched. "Chill out, Sarah. It's just a storm," Ethan teased, tossing a pillow at me as I fidgeted on the couch. I tried to brush it off. "Yeah, but it's not just the storm. I don't know. I feel like we're too far out here. What if something happens? There's no signal, no way to get help." Kara laughed, the sound too hollow for my liking. "Don't be paranoid. We'll be fine. It's just us here. No one's gonna bother us." But her voice wasn't convincing. The storm raged on outside, louder now, and the power flickered once, twice. "Great," James muttered, getting up from the armchair to check the fuse box. "This is just what we need." It was then that we heard it, a deep groan, like the house itself was shuddering from the storm. The lights flickered once more, then went out entirely. "Shit," Ben cursed, already stumbling toward the windows to see if the storm had knocked out the power. "This is perfect." Okay, let's stay calm," I said, my voice wavering a little. I didn't want to sound scared, but it was hard not to. The room was suddenly pitch black, the only sound being the wind and the occasional crack of thunder. "We have flashlights, right?" Ben found one under the couch. He clicked it on, and the small beam of light was a poor substitute for the warmth the electricity had provided. We gathered around the kitchen table, the silence between us growing thicker. "I'll go check the breaker," James said, still trying to take charge as usual. "Stay here." We waited. I felt it then, the slow trickle of unease that started to creep into my chest. It was like we weren't alone anymore, like something had shifted in the room. The temperature dropped noticeably, and I pulled my sweater tighter around my shoulders. "What is that?" Ethan's voice cut through the silence, his flashlight scanning the walls. "Did you hear that?" At first, I thought it was just the wind, but there was something else, something faint, like a whisper. "No, I didn't hear anything," Kara said, her voice too calm, almost too quiet. "But I heard it. It was there, just beneath the howling wind and rain. It was distant but distinct, soft murmurs, like voices talking." "Ben, go check outside," I said, trying to steady my voice. "See if someone's messing with us." He got up, hesitated, then grabbed the flashlight. "Yeah, okay." We watched as Ben disappeared into the dark, the beam of his flashlight barely cutting through the pitch-black night. The air felt colder, the whispers louder. It was all too much. Then, suddenly, the power came back on. The lights flickered, and the familiar hum of electricity filled the cabin. We all exhaled, relieved. But then something hit me. A chill running down my spine, a sense of wrongness. The cabin was too quiet. No one moved. I wasn't sure when I noticed it, but when I did, I couldn't look away. The door Ben had left open was now closed, and in the corner of the living room, there was a shadow, a dark shape, standing motionless against the wall. My heart skipped a beat, and I looked around at the others, but they hadn't noticed yet. They were too busy checking the power, too busy trying to make everything seem normal again. But I couldn't ignore it. The shape wasn't right. It wasn't one of us. And then I saw something else. A movement, like a flash of dark clothing. A face disappearing around the corner. I couldn't breathe. "What the hell was that?" I whispered, but I could barely hear my own voice. "Sarah, calm down," Ethan said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his tone now. But I couldn't calm down. The cabin was no longer safe. Something or someone was here with us. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cabin the air was thick with something darker. The shadow I'd seen, the thing that moved so fast it didn't seem human, was gone. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still there, just beyond the corner, watching us. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, but the weight in the air was too real. "Where's Ben?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. James went to the door and opened it. The storm howled as he stepped out onto the porch. I could see him scanning the dark yard, his flashlight cutting through the rain. "Ben!" he shouted. "Ben, where are you?" The rest of us stayed inside, tension winding tighter around us. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, and I could see the same fear reflected in everyone else's eyes. We were waiting for something to happen, waiting for Ben to come back, but I couldn't shake the fear that he wouldn't. Suddenly, James stepped back into the cabin, his face pale. "He's not out there," he said, his voice trembling. "He's gone." My heart sank. "What do you mean gone? He has to be out there. He's just hiding." "No," James said. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I looked everywhere. The woods are empty. No Ben." The wind screamed outside, as if to mock us. I felt a coldness seep into my bones. Okay, Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're not going to lose it. We'll just look for him. Calm down." But before he could finish, there was a noise, a loud thud from outside. All of us jumped, turning toward the door. There, on the front porch, was a shape, a body. Ben. His face was unrecognizable, twisted into a grotesque mockery of a human expression, eyes wide open, blood soaking through his clothes. His limbs were bent in unnatural angles, and his body was propped up against the door like a macabre display. It was clear he'd been dead for hours, but the sight still stopped me cold. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen in place. This isn't happening," Kara whispered, backing away from the door. Her eyes were wide, her breath shallow, but something in the way she spoke, it didn't sound like panic. It sounded almost relieved, like she expected it. "Who did this?" I finally managed, my voice cracking. The others were silent, staring at Ben's body, but Kara wasn't looking at it. She was looking at us, a strange smile tugging at her lips. "You don't get it, do you?" she said softly, almost lovingly, as though she was explaining something simple. "This has been the plan all along." "What?" James demanded, stepping forward. "What are you talking about?" Kara slowly walked toward the window, her back still to us. Her voice was calm, too calm. "You've all been part of the game. The storm, the power going out, Ben's death. It's all part of it." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean? What game?" She turned around, her eyes locking on mine, filled with something darker. "I've been here before, years ago. This cabin, it's not just a cabin. It's a hunting ground, a place where people like me bring others to be hunted." I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt suffocating. I felt the weight of her words press down on me, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "No," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "You're lying. I'm not," Kara interrupted, stepping closer to us. "I was part of it, the cult. They used this place for their sick rituals. And now, it's time for all of you to join the game. You thought the storm was random, but it's part of the trap." I felt the floor fall out from under me. She had brought us here, all along. The others hadn't known. But I had. I should have known. The signs had been there, in the way Kara had acted, in the way she'd been so quiet about the cabin. This wasn't an accident. I backed away, but there was no way out. The door was locked, the windows too small to escape through. My breath quickened. And then, as if on cue, the lights flickered and went out again. Darkness swallowed the cabin whole. I heard footsteps moving around the room, but I couldn't tell who it was. The storm outside was deafening, and the thunder seemed to shake the cabin to its very core. Then, a shadow moved toward me. Close, too close. I gasped, turning, but it wasn't Kara. It was one of them, masked, dressed in dark clothing, a glint of a knife catching the little light we had. "Run!" I screamed, but it was too late. Suddenly, there was a scream. James, dragged away into the darkness, his cry echoing through the cabin. I turned to Kara, her face now a twisted grin in the flickering light. She was watching us, waiting, as her friends came closer. The cult had arrived. Ethan grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now!" he shouted, but I could barely think. Ben's body, James's scream. It was all too much. I turned to Kara one last time. You knew from the start, didn't you?" Her smile widened. "Of course I did. You were always meant to be here, the last group to play the game." And then, like that, she was gone, swallowed by the shadows. A cold hand grabbed my ankle, pulling me toward the door. They were coming for me next. There was nowhere left to hide. I was trapped. And as I stared into the blackness, I heard the sound of laughter. Low, cruel laughter, growing louder, closer, until it filled the room.